Hello, boys and girls. We are continuing with topic 16 today. We're moving into lesson 5. We have focused on a lot of vocabulary the last couple days, looking at different types of lines, whether they're parallel or intersecting. We've looked at points, we've looked at line segments, we've looked at rays. And then yesterday we started to look at angle measures using a circle, using a unit angle um, from that circle to help us finding the measures of other angles within that circle. So that is one way to measure angles. Starting today, we are going to be looking at another tool to help us measure some angles. And looking at the screen, you probably see them on there. It's called a protractor. And that's really what today's focus is going to be, is looking at how to utilize those protractors to help us measure different angles and making sure that we're using them correctly to measure those angles. So let's jump right in. Okay, we have our two protractors on the screen here, and it's an angle. Remember, I'm going to just kind of refresh our memory. An angle, remember, is two rays that have the same endpoint to form an angle. So remember, a ray is an endpoint with a line with an arrow. When two of those meet, that's when we have our angle. So we have two angles on this screen that we are going to measure. We have this one here that I'm going to outline in purple. Okay, and then we have this one here that I'm going to outline in purple. Okay, so those are the two that we're going to focus on for right now. Okay, so let's look at our first one over here. So we would call this, because it has a point of P, Q, and R, okay, we would call it angle P, Q, R. You use the points that it's labeled with to name it or to identify it. So we are looking at angle PQR. Now this protractor, it's on an angle, so it's hard to see, but if we look, the bottom of the angle is right on the bottom of the protractor, this line right here, okay, that goes across the bottom. And that's important because if it's not lined up there, then your angle measure is going to be off. Now you're going to notice that there's two sets of numbers, okay? From this side, we notice the numbers go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. They're getting bigger, but on the top, they're getting smaller. The nice thing about a protractor is no matter which direction an angle is facing, you can measure it. So if you have your angle facing this way, you always want to make sure you're starting at the 0 point and counting up. So in this case, here's our 0 right here. Okay, so we're going to be using the bottom part of our protractor. Okay, so I look, I see 10, I see 20, I see 30, I see 40, I see 50, and it falls right in the middle of 40 and 50. So that would mean our angle is 45 degrees. So same thing over here. Our protractor's all lined up. That center dot here is on our middle endpoint. The bottom of our angle is located right on that bottom 0 line. Now, because it's opening up this way, we're going to use this bottom portion because this is the 0 spot that we are lined up with. If we were lined up over here, then we would be using the top of our protractor, but we're not. We will see that on the next slide. So if we look at our angle and you look through these numbers right here, about what would you say that green line falls on? And if you guessed 130 degrees, you are correct. Now, what's nice is if you remember back to one of our first lessons, this is a 90-degree angle. This was an acute angle, meaning it was less than 90 degrees. And then we had this, which was an obtuse angle, which means it was greater than 90 degrees. Our angle here is an obtuse angle, so you know that your measurement should be greater than this, 90 degrees. This angle over here is an acute angle. You can just tell by it because otherwise it would be 90 degrees there. So you know that your measurement that you come up with should be less than 90 degrees. Okay? let's take a look at this protractor here. We have a bunch of different angles. We're going to measure a few together, and then I'm going to have you answer a few questions and see if you can find the measurement on some of these. And we're going to do 2 together, and you're going to do 1 on your own. I'm going to do 1 with one angle facing one way and do 1 with an angle facing the other way, okay? So there's all these different angle choices up here, okay? And if we look, let's see what I maybe want to do. And notice all of them have an O in the middle because the O is that middle end point where they all meet. So let's do the first one. Let's do angle. Remember, you write it with the angle. A, O, D. So I see my A, I go to my O, and I see my D. Now because my angle's facing this way, I'm going to use that bottom portion. So I see my 10, I see my 20, I see my 30, I see that it crosses directly on 40 degrees, okay? I'm going to switch to a different color for my next angle. Let's do angle H, O, E. So if you notice, here's my H over here, there's my O endpoint, but here's my E. Our angle is facing this way now. And because you want to make sure you're going up or increasing in your measurement, it would not make sense to start here at 180 and measure this way because it wouldn't make sense for our angle numbers to being smaller. So we want to make sure we're on the top of our protractor when we're measuring. We have our 10, our 20, our 30, 40, 50, and 60. And our E falls right between 50 and 60. So our angle, H, O, E, would be equal to 55 degrees, okay? So now I'm going to have you measure. I'm going to get a different color for you so it's outlined. We'll do blue. I would like you to measure angle H. There's our endpoint O. C. The first thing I want you to think of before you start coming up with that measurement is that an obtuse angle, an acute angle? Okay, is it a 90-degree angle? How does it relate to a 90-degree angle? So you're doing H, O, C. Okay, go ahead and take your guess on what you think that angle is. Hopefully you made your guess, and if you looked, because it's opening this way, we know we need to use these top numbers, and we're going to go because it goes quite a ways until we hit that angle. And I see that I have my 150 here and my 160 here, and it's right in the middle, so it's 155 degrees. So that's what we're going to be doing in class tomorrow, is really looking at how to measure these different angles using our protractors and making sure that we're using those protractors correctly. All right, thank you, boys and girls.